For your camera.
Yep, camera speeds. Speed. Oh, let's second slide.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Yes, go ahead.
Second sticks?
Yep.
Okay. So, here we go. So, tell me, how did you get involved in the Kosher Kitchen?
Debbie.
Debbie?
Yeah, we were both friends of Debbie, and we were working at Bray Ra, which was an alternative Jewish student union on campus, and she had started to work there in January. She got involved in the Kosher Kitchen very early on, and she said, "Hey, you got to come volunteer." And so I was like, "All right, I got a free meal. Okay, I can do this." And it was how I got started. And
Yeah, we were just talking about this because I don't remember exactly how Debbie brought the subject up or how she coerced me into coming to the Kosher Kitchen, because who knew what it was. But I like to cook. I like food. I had lived in Jerusalem for the previous year, and so this was a Jewish entity, something to do, and so Debbie brought me, and it's a very welcoming place, and it was busy, and they said, "Okay, can you chop vegetables?" And I said, "Sure," and I chopped vegetables, and they looked at my work, and they went, "Okay, you can stay." Remember this?
yeah.
Because I knew how to work in a kitchen, and so part of it was the place is a real restaurant, and they needed somebody who could actually function in a kitchen, because some of our members really couldn't function in a kitchen. They could wash pots, fortunately, but they couldn't do anything else, and some of us could cook.
Right.
And so it was a great way to cook and to be involved in this really interesting Jewish enterprise and social enterprise. We were all young, very idealistic.
Yeah, and I had been a waitress before, so I knew how to do that. I was a waitress in a restaurant, a coffee shop, so I had those skills as well.
That's great. Could we get, let me just adjust that headroom here just a little bit up there. Here we go. What was it about the kitchen? I mean, it was so alternative. It was so non-establishment. What was it about that was attractive to you?
For me, it was just that. I had started working when I was a kid for social justice issues, arguing, trying to get 18-year-olds to vote, the feminist movement and equality for women. And so all of those things, I had been marching in Washington, all of those things were really important to me. As well as the fact that it was an alternative Jewish organization. Being part of Bray Ra and then coming to the Kosher Kitchen everything all came together in one place.
Yeah, I wasn't I was politically active in a more traditional way. At 18, I had run for elected office, and while I was still in high school, essentially. Once we could vote at 18, I decided to run for a Democratic National Convention. And so I was always politically active. I wasn't so active in Jewish organizations. My father was, his generation was. And I saw this as an opportunity to get involved into this Jewish organization. Ira is very charismatic. Rachel, the organization was just, you walked in and you felt like you were part of this organization. You just wanted to be there. I had worked on a kibbutz. I lived on a kibbutz after high school. And when I went back to Israel the year before, it was 1973 during the Yom Kippur War. And when things were stressful there, I went back to the same kibbutz, which is the same kind of collective environment. And I looked at this environment and it was familiar. And so it was just very welcoming.
Why was the Kosher Kitchen a non-profit restaurant?
As I recall.
It wasn't really a non-profit restaurant. It was an anti-profit restaurant.
What's the difference?
Well, I think the difference, I think it was a political statement that, and obviously Ira and Rachel can address this from their perspective because they created that. But from my perspective, it was a way to say to the community, we're going to do this. We're going to create a kosher restaurant. We're going to provide these services. We're going to provide social services and kosher food. And we can do it without having that profit motive. And it was really a political and social statement. Being a nonprofit didn't make you different than any other charitable organization. This was really meant to be different. It was meant to shake things up.
Yeah, and in being nonprofit and choosing that model, I remember the idea was that poor Orthodox Jewish families could afford to eat out because otherwise they couldn't do that. And so for us, it was challenging this notion that we should be making money on certain things, and food was not something we should be making profit on. You know, food for people, not for profit, was one of my favorite quotes. And the idea that we could provide an opportunity for the poorest members of society to come out and enjoy something that normally only privileged people do was really important to me too. And including them, being all-inclusive of all members of the Jewish community was really important. And so we'd get these, you know, wealthier people coming in and saying, "You're not charging enough money." And we'd say, "Leave a bigger tip."
Right.
Yeah, because we also believed, you know, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. And that's where it became really important for us to make sure that we were serving the whole community.
Good, good. So, when you had a profit or a surplus, what did you do with it?
You know, I don't really remember being part of that. I remember more not having money.
How much did you get paid for working?
It depended. I know when I first started working, I was part-time, and so I think I got minimum wage. I got an hourly wage. I didn't really pay attention to what my paycheck was. When I became a full-time member, I was getting $100 a week, and there were times when it was only $90 a week. I don't remember being part of it when they were getting unemployment.
No, I don't really remember getting any money at all. I'm not sure I did.
Yeah, I don't remember at that point.
I was in school. I mean, I was a full-time student, and we were just talking earlier, we're not sure when we slept because I was a full-time student and in a fairly rigorous science curriculum, and then I was working in the kitchen. And we weren't just working in the kitchen. We built the tables.
Right.
We shopped. We menu planned, but we were at the market on a regular basis shopping. It's not like we just walked in the kitchen and did things. We literally created physically. We created the space.
Right.
Do you remember making the tables?
I do. I do. I borrowed my father's sander, and it was over the one break.
Yeah, we bought this plywood and sanded and polyurethane things and made tables because we needed new tables.
Right.
So it was, you know, we did absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone did everything. Everyone did what they could do based on their skill set.
Right. Yeah.
That's great. It's a great answer.
Yeah.
Why do you think the Kosher Kitchen was important to the community?
I think there's this notion that we develop community around a table, that we, when we sit around a table and eat, we share ideas and we develop bonds that we don't normally build. I had a rabbi who said one of the reasons that Jews kept kosher was to make sure they didn't assimilate into outside culture, because those ideas that could destroy the community might come in. So if you just sat at table with your own people, you didn't run the risk of assimilation. And I think this notion of bringing all parts of the Jewish community together instead of, you know, the different groups, bringing Lubavitch Jews and with secular Jews. We used to have these incredible conversations because we did have some Lubavitch Jews who were part of the collective. And it was a time when we were really trying to work on feminism and how could Orthodox Jewish women accept all of these binding rules, and they would give us their perspective. And it was eye-opening for me to understand how they felt being Orthodox was liberating. And so we would have these conversations around a table with food. And so that was just from our own experience, but we were hoping to accomplish that with the whole community.
Well, there would be no other forum for bringing together people who were so diverse. There would be no reason if you sent out invitations to people who had different political views, who had different social views, who saw religion differently, and you sent out invitations and say, come, let's have a discussion, that would be a total failure. So food is a common thing. It's bringing people to the mean, so to speak, and food did it. And the fact that it was kosher allowed the broadest range of people to come into the restaurant, and they may not have even recognized that the food was the lure. The food was the bait to get them to come into an environment that was going to challenge them from a political and social and religious perspective. But that was the goal of the anti-profit. That was the goal of the whole restaurant, was to challenge the community's thoughts, their ideas, their structure, not to destroy it, but to challenge it in a way that made people look around and see why they thought they did, the way they did, and maybe there was something valuable in the way other people thought, but they would never have talked to them. Mm-hmm. They would never have been in the same room with them if there wasn't the lure of the food.
Right.
And
a great bowl of chicken soup with matzo balls.
It was great food, except for the flunkin'.
They loved the flunkin'. I don't get that.
What about to you? I mean, why was the Kosher Kitchen, Alanna, why was the Kosher Kitchen important to you?
Because it brought together...
If you could use part of my question in your answer, because my question was the other.
Oh, sure. I think the Kosher Kitchen was important to me at the time because I felt as though I was living my values. Politically, socially, all the issues around food, trying to make the food healthy and nourishing was just incredible. To be working in an environment where men and women were equal, where my Jewish values were being lived, was just so important to me. So I just felt at home with that model. So that was, and the Jewishness part of it too. I had gone to a very small school in Pennsylvania, and I was so depressed. I quit school, and my father screamed and argued with me, and finally he said, I know what the problem is. There's no Jews at that school. We'll find you a school with Jews, and I'll send you there. And he was right for one of the few times in my life. And when I got there and then found the Kosher Kitchen, I just felt like I blossomed. So being able to do that was really important to me.
And Ira, how about you?
Yeah.
How was it important? And if you could say Kosher Kitchen, that would...
Yeah, so, I mean, the Kosher Kitchen was important to me as an alternative Jewish environment. So I had grown up in a Reform synagogue, which I rejected, and sometimes I would leave the Reform synagogue and go next door to the Orthodox synagogue, which was kind of crazy, but I would go there sometimes. But I didn't really fit in any of those places. And so here was a place that was clearly identified as being a Jewish organization, and it was pretty easy to fit in. You could be Jewish, you could be serving the community. For me, that was sort of a religious or spiritual event without all of the trappings of organized religion.
Yeah.
So if you go there and you create kosher food and you serve the community, to me, that is being as religious as somebody who goes to a synagogue 7 days a week and prays and does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those people are not contributing. And so maybe they're contributing to their own spirituality, but they're not really contributing to what I think is the greater good. And so you got that in the Kosher Kitchen. You got both.
You know, you bring up something interesting. A follow-up question is, you know, you were there because, you know, for wanting to sort of express or explore aspects of Judaism that you couldn't do otherwise, and helping your community. But it seems to me that a lot of people benefited themselves from being at the Kosher Kitchen. Would that be true, Alanna, for you? And if so, how is it true?
I think I developed a lot of skills that served me later in life because of my experience at the Kosher Kitchen. The idea of studying 24/7, applying my principles, learning to operate with consensus was really important. Being able to do all the jobs in the restaurant served me. I ended up being a computer programmer and ended up working in a company. I chose the company I chose because they had women in upper management as opposed to everywhere else. You know, computer science is a real male, geeky kind of thing. And I ended up in a place where women were promoted. But we also did not just be a programmer or an analyst. The director in charge at the time wanted people to understand all the jobs. And so we became the complete programmer analyst, and we had to learn all aspects of the job, and that was exactly what we did at the Kosher Kitchen. And so I had those skills. Later became involved in anti-racism work, and the people I was with said, I don't understand it. I'm not racist. What's anti-racist? And I could use that example of the difference between nonprofit and anti-profit. And so these skills have continued to serve me through my life that I think were really important. Plus, learning to understand with compassion the views of the other. And I know in this particularly difficult time, you know, my experience in understanding the ultra-Orthodox and my experience in understanding the conservative end of the Jewish community, being able to see both sides is something that I learned at the Kosher Kitchen. And so I hope that it serves me well going forward in extremely difficult political times.
Did you also, Alanna, did you have any improved or enhanced sense of your own identity as a result of Kosher Kitchen?
As a Jew, yeah, absolutely.
If you could sort of contextualize.
Yeah, so understanding my identity as a Jew was just very much a part of what we were doing. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and I was typically the only Jew, or I spent some time in North Carolina, where my father was invited to join the KKK, and that was a real panic. And a friend said, I'll take care of it for you, don't worry about it. So for me, being the only Jew when I was growing up was really a struggle. And I felt as though me as an individual representing the whole Jewish community, and to be involved with other Jews in that situation made me feel more confident, more comfortable. I didn't feel as though I was defending an entire race of people. I felt like I was part of that group.
And being at the Kosher Kitchen, you know, I grew up in a relatively secular home. My father had gone to a yeshiva and grew up in a kosher home. I grew up in a secular home. And being at the Kosher Kitchen from a perspective of Judaism was an educational experience. Yeah. Because I knew something about kashrut. I had traveled with a friend of mine who kept kosher, and I had lived in Israel, so I knew something about kashrut. But really, I didn't know that much. And boy, did I learn a lot about kashrut and all the details and minutia. And you know, going forward, I clearly am no expert on kashrut, but I'm in a place now in terms of where I work and what I do, where there are very few Jews around. I mean, I live in a big city, and there are lots of Jews in the community, but sometimes I may be sitting in a room with 5 or 6 or 8 people, and no one has any idea what Judaism is. They have no idea. Even though they grow up in a city where there's a fairly large Jewish population, they may not know anything. So who's going to teach them?
Right, right. And we
You know-
learned, in addition to the kashrus, we learned culturally things like the glass of latte, the glass of tea in a metal sleeve with sugar cubes around it.
Right.
And we served it, and it wasn't until I watched Hester Street, the movie, that's what they're doing, So we learned some of the cultural food experiences that belong to our people. That was really important. I was just talking to a young person the other day about the glace au latte. And it's like, this is not even my generation, but before that, and I'm passing it on to younger people.
That's good. That's good. Now, I'm wondering if the Kosher Kitchen, though, in terms of you were young people then. You were like
21.
21.
21.
Yeah.
And at that age, you're trying to figure out not only what the world's about, but you're trying to figure out what am I about. Did the Kosher Kitchen help you in terms of figuring out your own identity, in terms of what turned you on, what you were interested in, what you wanted to do beyond the Kosher Kitchen? Did it help you then?
I think it actually taught me something about food, and the idea that food is a way to communicate, and food is a way to open up communication that you might not be able to open up otherwise. And if you talk to the people I work with now, they know that they will tell you that over the years I have shown up with food here and there and everywhere, and as soon as you show up with food, people just, no matter what's going on, no matter what kind of stress is going on, you show up with food, you feed people, and then you can talk to them. Their energy level improves, their stress level goes down, somebody pays attention to them, somebody cares about them, and then all of a sudden you can have a conversation. As opposed to, I'm a physician, so I get to walk in.
Let's just hold this truck go by.
Yeah.
If we can back up just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Maybe pick up where food brings people together.
Yeah, okay. So, one of the things I learned, and I talked about a little earlier, and that is food is a way to communicate. Food is a way to break down barriers and open up doors. And I'm a physician, and so if I show up in the hospital or in my office and I bring food, which I do frequently, a little noisy.
Yeah. I show up at the hospital.
Yeah, and I bring food. I learn.
You start essentially.
Yeah.
I should say I show up at the hospital.
Yeah. So I'm a physician. I come to the hospital or work, and I bring food. I know that is a way to get people to relax, to smile, to open up, so that we can communicate better. And I think that was one of the purposes of the restaurant, was to improve communication. And that's it's to me obvious that food is a great way to create a warm environment, and certainly you learn that in the kitchen.
I think in terms of my identity, I didn't really understand it until after I left. Because, as I said before, growing up, I was by myself. Even within my own family, even within the Jewish community, we had to drive 20 minutes to get to the closest synagogue. I had this identity of being alone. And at the Kosher Kitchen, I was suddenly part of a collective. Oh, now I sound like the Borg.
but it was forever. I mean,
Yeah.
look at us now. We're both.
was.
We're both.
And
I won't say how old we are, but it's been a long time,
right.
and we're still here all these years, even though for many years we were not physically connected and not seeing each other. The relationships created at the restaurant they've transcended time.
Yeah.
And when I walked in last night, 8 hours late, everybody was like thrilled that I got here.
Yeah.
And
But even more so, it's the reunions that have helped me look back on that time because I hadn't really paid attention to it. And with the reunions, I was able to connect the dots for me so that I could look back and say, well, yeah, the stuff I learned at the Kosher Kitchen, even though I thought back on those days fondly, was, yeah, it affected me here and here and here and here. And it is. I've been in touch with Debbie these many years, and she has been in connection with some of those people who are in connection with these people over here. So we've been loosely connected, but every time we walk into the room together, it's like we picked up from yesterday, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or, a couple of weeks. It's that connection that I can now look back, and every time I do, it just feels stronger, that my identity was shaped during those years that I was at the Kosher Kitchen, and I didn't even realize it.
there's no question that while you're in the midst of something like that, you don't really appreciate it. You're 21 years old. You're living in the moment, and
Sleep deprived.
Doing something that turns out was pretty important for the community and for ourselves. And you're right. Later on, when you sit back and reflect on what's happened in your life, then you can see it as an integral part of your life. None of us could probably imagine our lives without that experience. And for some of us, like myself, it was really brief because I was only in the environment I was for a year.
Not
even a year.
You left in July, but you would come back and visit
Yeah, but I was in school
up in Baltimore.
Instead of College Park, and so I was disconnected. But I was there for a little bit of time. But I mean, you were in the room last night. It was not like I was a short timer ever.
Right.
Okay, well, those are great answers, thank you. So there are lots of nonprofit restaurants now. They're springing up all over the United States. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's like maybe a line between what the Kosher Kitchen did and what's happening now? I mean, what you did back then was very, very unusual in terms of a nonprofit restaurant. I mean, there were very few of them.
Right.
And now there's like a proliferation of nonprofit restaurants. How do you respond to that?
Good. No, I think that it just means that.
I'm sorry, if you could say
Okay.
the fact that there are so many nonprofit restaurants.
The fact that there are more and more nonprofit restaurants tells us that we were doing the right thing then, or Ira and Rachel had the right idea then, and I think it's a great idea. I think that even nonprofit restaurants have to have profit. They have to have a surplus to survive. These are businesses that need to be viable businesses. But people who walk into a nonprofit restaurant are probably going to go there because the philosophy is a little different. The theory is a little different. The food quality, we were worried about food quality. We were worried about where food came from. And hopefully the fact that they're nonprofit will carry over into how they deal with not only their customers and their employees, but their suppliers and how their suppliers function.
Right. Yeah, and that was tricky because we were limited. If we were going to have kosher meat, there were very few places where we could get kosher meat. I think in terms of being nonprofit, that's great, but we had a very complex mix of, do these organizations work collectively? Do they build consensus among the workers? Are they trying to build community in addition to serving food? And that's what we were trying to do. to try to bring people to the table with disparate views and get them to talk. So I think there was so much else that goes into that about, so just being nonprofit isn't enough. You need to have something else to pull it together to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's why what we did was so complicated and successful at the same time in terms of what we were doing.
Yeah, hopefully if you decide to operate a business as a nonprofit, like a restaurant, which is not easy to run a restaurant. Hopefully there's some theme, there's some reason why you choose that economic model. And one would hope, if you're picking that economic model, that it's not to make it just look different for better economic gain somehow, but that you're creating a nonprofit entity because you have some greater goal.
Right. Yeah, because if I'm thinking of a nonprofit restaurant, I'm thinking of a restaurant that is likely working to serve the poor. Is somebody who's rich going to go there? Somebody, even middle class, upper class, are they going to go there? Oh, that's a nonprofit restaurant. It's serving, what population are they serving? Do I want to rub elbows with those people? So that's what we were able to do because we were kosher. So again, I don't think nonprofit is enough because you have to have something that's going to pull in different people if you want to make a difference.
And we were the only kosher restaurant in the DC area at the time.
Right.
And I've always said that part of the allure of the restaurant and part of the controversy of the restaurant is that what we said to the community is, we're a bunch of 21-year-old kids, and we're able to do this. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with the rest of you? Why can't you create a kosher restaurant and serve the community? We can do it, and we really are not restaurateurs. We are not professionals, clearly. And not that we didn't learn quickly, but we're not. And we are still able to get this off the ground, and make it work. I mean, not forever, but we did it. And it was sort of in your face.
Yeah.
We were sort of in their face saying, what's wrong with you?
Right. And it's interesting because when I was researching our participation in the Smithsonian Festival of American Folklife, and I was looking through all these documentations and I saw notes from meetings they had prior to them contacting the Kosher Kitchen. They were really adamant about not hiring some large food company to come in and serve hamburgers and French fries. They wanted culturally appropriate food. And when they were talking to the Marriott about providing kosher meals for the participants, they said, be advised it will triple the price of the food. And they ended up with us because we were a lot less expensive. But that gives you an idea of, if you want kosher, 3 times as much. So that's what it would have taken. And we're saying, no, it doesn't have to cost 3 times as much. You can feed people for a reasonable price.
Yeah. And if we had been professional restaurant people, we probably could have
taken advantage of that.
Well, we probably would have done it differently and maybe in a different location. But I think the social and political aspect of the restaurant was really important. That was what made it different.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I think we're done with the questions, and now is the fun time where we go through. Now, David asked me to explain that what we're doing now is something separate from the documentary. This is strictly as a fundraiser.
Mm.
And so at this
The script.
So at this point, we'll alternate lines.
Okay.
I don't
This
know.
is the sizzle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is the sizzle,
The
not the
sizzle
steak.
reel. So what I'd like you to do is both of you look into this camera lens.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't look at me or any of us. And I'll just feed you lines, and Then, now, if I give you a line to say, and you go like, gee, I really don't want to say that, that really doesn't sound like me, or can I do this in a different way, or say it in different words, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so it's sort of like more of a guideline. You don't have to say it word for word. If you want to change it, it's fine.
Right.
Are we supposed to say these together?
No.
Oh,
We'll alternate.
okay.
Yeah,
Cuts.
yes.